Influence TV. I'm so excited to have you with us today. This is episode 1, and I am just so excited. I'm a business coach and mentor in the marketplace, and I bring you some transformational tools and nuggets and some genius information on how you would be navigating through your life as a marketplace leader. This will serve not only people that are in business, because I really want to come to you to share about life and transformation, and most of all, how you do you, relationships, and your money story. So let's get right into it. Now, I really wanted to start off with an episode that really intrigues me, because we find that while we're in the marketplace, for the most part, it is about relationships. It is about building strong relationships for collaboration and growth and joint ventures and all of those. If you do not have that strong buildup of relationships, I can promise you, you do not have a business. Because really, it doesn't matter what we gain out of business, whether that is money or possessions or cars, if we don't have effective relationships. And one of the key things with relationships is that we would care enough to build on that by caring enough to confront some of the things that we are faced with on a day-to-day basis. Now, we live in a fast-paced world. Fast fashion, fast food, fast communication, fast release of relationships, fast love, fast media, fast everything. And what we do as well is we rush in and avoid relationships. Really be covering 5 tips today on how to build on that and to care enough to confront. That is our topic today. Caring enough to confront. And the very first nugget that I want to share with you today is to confront with clarity. What's important in this? And I've actually converted the word confrontation to carefrontation when we're really building around the care factor. And we're going to cover some amazing nuggets today that you'll be able to take away. And I trust that it will transform your life. So having clarity. When there's a misunderstanding, when there's something that someone has actually sort of overstepped the line perhaps, or upset you in a way, or there's been a mutual exchange of a conversation or a matter that has disturbed, that we have clarity when we're actually going into that relationship. What's important is that we know how to deal with the matter at hand. And I love what the book of Proverbs says, and I'm going to be covering a few scriptures in today's episode. The book of Proverbs says to us, and I just want to grab my glasses, is in Proverbs 27:6, it says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful." And really, if we can unpack that genius of the scripture, Proverbs is the book of wisdom in the Bible, that we can have relationships, and I think if that relationship is strong and solid enough, that if someone does upset us or offend us, and they're a friend, we can go in and we can actually fix that. We can easily actually come through and amend that relationship based on the strength of that relationship. And if you look further, the latter part of that scripture talks about the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Because if you don't really know somebody well enough and they're nice to you, or they're overly compensating their compliments and giving you accolades, it almost cannot be trusted, right? You would agree with me. Let's look at the second reason, or the second nugget that I want to share with you. As I said, I'll be giving you 5 tips on how to care enough to confront. The second one we're looking at here is seeking to understand. Now, of all the books I've read, other than the Bible, one of the most genius and magical books ever is the book written by Stephen Covey, and he writes The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you haven't read it yet, I must have read it 8 times more on your behalf. And therefore, I want to encourage you to read that book. So when I say read, I'm now, because I'm so busy in the things that I do, I've resorted to Audible because I take too long to read a book. So I've read the book cover to cover, the hard copy, but I've listened to it 8 times more. So in total, I've read it about 9 times, read and listened. But I tell you, this book is actually such a genius. It does actually back it up with using scripture. I believe that Stephen Covey is a man of faith, and therefore he teaches very strong principles around that. But I promise you, if ever you need a book, or even ever read a single book, then that is the book to read, other than if you're a believer that you would be tucking into the scriptures. Now, seeking to understand, a full text, no pleasure in, sorry, I just put the scripture on the screen. A full takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. How many of you found that sometimes when you're confronted with people that are constantly blabbing and giving their opinion and what they believe, that they almost become an irritation because they, overly expressing themselves, and with a lack of understanding, or with a lack of actually taking the time to listen. Stephen Covey talks about seeking to understand. Scripture tells us seek to understand. Scripture tells us to that a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but in expressing his opinion. And therefore, the guide for us here as marketplace leaders that are in faith and they have committed your business, your venture, to God. Why did I say to the God? To God, to the Most High God. And that's what I wanted to say. Is that we do go into a place where we dedicate and commit everything we do about business, everything we do about life to God. That we spend time. And relationships are no different. That there are times that we would need to not really respond straight away to anything that has happened, but that we take it away and we actually really do go and consult with the Lord about that, right? Let's look at the third reason. And the third tip I want to give you is seeking a resolution and not victory. What do I mean when I say that? Because often when we confront, we go in and we're wanting to make our point. We're wanting to actually have a win over the other person to prove that we are right. This is not what it's about. What it really is, the true genius about getting a result from the other person that we're going in to confrontate is to find the solution as to how that will actually play out in a futuristic relationship. We're not here. Stephen Covey talks about, and I believe it's seeking to understand is his second reason. He writes 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I believe it's the fourth. Well, it may not be one of the. It may be one of the things that he says around that principle. It may be one of the rules. The win-win. That we go into finding a resolution where both people are winning. Because often we'd find that if we go in there with confrontation in an aggressive way, passive-aggressive, just to make our point, we could quite easily have a win-lose where you feel you've won, the other person feels that they've lost, or where you both lose. But the end result that you really want out of that is that you have a win-win. Let's look at what the book of Proverbs says about that. It says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. When we're seeking resolution and not victory, it's important for us to actually use wisdom to go into that space and have that conversation in a way that the person will feel embraced, that the person will feel respected, and that you are actually articulating that, especially if you are the person that's making the choice to go in and confront that situation. All right. Let's look at the fourth tip: abolish the avoidance theory. Now, I love this. And the reason I really actually find that this is so important for us to remember that when we avoid things, we don't learn anything from it, and neither does the other person. Now, I have learned over time that when we actually care enough to confront, and we do go in and have that conversation, as difficult as it is, we're really sharpening that person, right? We're sharpening that relationship. Iron sharpens iron. And what's important there is we're actually also allowing growth. We're allowing that person not to ebb away in even repeating some of those behaviors. So let's say you sort of feeling that you've been more harmed and that person was sort of more wrong. It can go that way, right? But it's important to actually keep that, reserve that opinion. But avoiding it doesn't actually fix the problem. Avoiding it either means that you would walk away from that relationship, or it does not actually grow from a point that it needs to grow because you have avoided that conversation. Because if that is ever repeated, there's no lesson learned and more harm could be caused by that. Keep grabbing the long grasses. Let me look at the last one. I wanted to give you a scripture there, sorry. Proverbs 25:11. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. When I came across this scripture while through my studies, I found that to be so profound, that a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. The metaphorical approach of that is grandiose, it is splendor, it is beauty. And therefore, in your efforts to abolish, to not avoid, you can actually create such a good moment between you and your counterpart that is needing to have that conversation. Let's look at the fifth reason. I love this one. Be discerning. Because confrontation is not for everyone. Confrontation is not where you would be talking to everyone that you feel wronged by. And the reason I say that, it's important for you to figure out who sits close to your fire. Who is the person that may need to hear you out? Because not every relationship needs confrontation. Let me give you some perspective on what I mean by that. Let's say you're meeting have a new encounter with someone, and you have your first or second meeting, and you haven't really gotten to know them very well. And there's some things that trickles through in that conversation that's either offensive, that's, sort of blown out to be something where you kind of just want to run away from that conversation, but then you feel the need to maybe want to confront that person and pull them up on things. That relationship is not strong enough yet for it. You don't know each other, right? What you're learning through that relationship is, what does Maya Angelou say? She says it so profoundly. People will tell you who they are, believe them. So when you're having that experience, it gives you information, and the person's really teaching you something about them, where you can actually navigate through that and make a decision as to whether that is a relationship that's going to be in your formidable future. Right? The reason I say be discerning is that you don't need to address anything, and especially not to someone that you don't know very well and you haven't actually built a relationship with them. In time, it'll come. It doesn't also mean that you've had that experience with someone that they're completely a write-off. Right? That's the other thing. Another topic for another day. So the fifth is to be discerning as to the who, the what, the when, which is also then building up to that relationship that you need to have as to when, who, the how, what is being said, how it needs to be said, in terms of how you're going to use your tonality around expressing what it is you're needing to express. I hope that makes sense. Now, let's get into what the scripture says about that. Do not speak in the hearing of a fool, for he will despise the wisdom of your words. There is when the discernment comes in. Also, that even if you have been in a relationship with someone for a long time, and you know that there's so many broken pieces or a miscommunication or an imbalance, and you're feeling that you need to make a point each and every time, it's important for you to take heed. Take heed of what this particular scripture says. Do not speak in the hearing of a fool, for he will despise the wisdom of your words. In other words, I love what I heard once, and I use it often. A wise woman once said nothing. Sometimes we just need to not say anything at all. I wonder if all of this is making sense. And then what I want to do as a final bow out to this episode, I really want to get into I know this is probably annoying that I keep putting the glasses on. I'm actually trying to avoid the glare on the screen. So I'm trying to not have the glare. Someone gave me feedback on another live. So here we go. Let's look at the word change. When we're in a relationship where we're needing to confront, it's important for us to adapt to change. I run a very, very effective model on this in a full workshop. Change. I used to be Change Strategic Coaching. That was my very first coaching company that I ran some 12 years ago. But let's look at what the mnemonic breakdown is. And I built this myself because I resonated so strongly with it. So the C is for choice. We have a choice as to how we do life. We have a choice as to how we do business. We have a choice of how we do relationship. That is the freedom that you have, is that you have the freedom of choice. Now, whilst we're going through this model of change, we create habits. And if you look at the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the book I mentioned of Stephen Covey, I implore you to get yourself a copy or find the audio and listen to it. It'll change your life. I promise you it will. So habits are important as to what we do and how we do things, right? Because we become our habits. We form habits and we live through them as that. The A in the word change, I've just listed it there as your attitude. Your attitude is vitally important as to how you do relationships and how you care enough to confront. Your attitude will be your altitude. Let's look at the second line, the last letter, the N. The N is for nurturing. When we're in relationships and we care enough to confront, we most definitely are in a nurturing relationship. I said earlier on that we don't teach anyone anything if we don't actually care enough to go up to that person. And in that way, you can actually come together in a way that is so magically profound in growing that relationship. Let's look at the G. I've listed that as gratitude. And I thought about it earlier on while I was thinking about this podcast. And I thought, when we go in to confront someone and we express gratitude for who they are, people love to hear good things about themselves. Don't you agree? How vital is it for you to say, I appreciate you. I'm so grateful for who you are. I'm grateful for what we share. I'm grateful for the magic and the essence of our relationship, or whatever you want to say to this person, but express gratitude. Because gratitude opens the vortex of a whole lot more to happen in that relationship. When we can express appreciation and gratitude towards that person, it really elevates that relationship. I wonder if this is resonating with you. The very last letter of that word change is engage. Remain focused and engage on the conversation and on the person. Right? Don't go in there with your cell phone and answer your phone and reply to text messages while you have actually made the effort to come across. The person has actually given you the time. The other thing I also wanted to say is that be sure to check in with the person if coming across to talk about a matter is okay. Because if they're better prepared that you are coming to talk about something that matters to you both, they have an opportunity then to not be on the back foot, but also to be forward propelling in the growth and the dynamic of that relationship. I'm just so glad that we could spend time today together. This is the first episode. It may not be perfect, but they say done is better than perfect. So I am trusting that you will embrace me through this. We will be coming to you with the next episode 2, about starting over. starting over is a hard journey, and I just want to invite you to come along to that. I'm going to also put on the screen if there's a way that you're wanting to come along and connect with me. I'd like to leave my email address for you that will be flashing on the screen right now. If there's anything I can do to you, I'm a mentor, business coach. I coach across not only believers, however, part of my strength is to actually get into that space in the marketplace to help Christian leaders and mentors to elevate their call to the marketplace. God bless you, and thank you so much for joining me today.